Remain here. Okay. It was the first time I saw Mike's beloved face turn terrifying. As I recoiled and released his hand, the door above us shut tight. A grim clicking noise reverberated. It was locked. In the dim basement, I felt trapped, but I couldn't scream. I cradled my newborn. My precious Roy, born just yesterday, rested in my arms. How did this happen so suddenly? Tears welled up. In this dark confinement, with postpartum emotions raw, Roy, whom I just nursed, slept peacefully, oblivious to the danger. That was the only solace. Then about 3 hours must have passed when I turned on the only electric lamp and had just finished breastfeeding again. A black shadow emerged in the light of that lamp. Who's there? I turned around in fear. A black shadow had suddenly appeared from the back of the basement. It turned out to be the bluebird of happiness, which gave me the opportunity to lift me out of the depths of misery. My name is Emma, 27 years old. I work as a veterinary nurse at an animal hospital in town. I had just recently married and was enjoying happy days. My spouse's name is Mike. He's 2 years older than me, serious and gentle. He's so considerate that sometimes I think he might be too kind. I even feel a sense of respect for him. It's like a dream that I could date Mike, be proposed to, and get married. However, there was always a dark feeling rooted in my heart. The reason is none other than my unfortunate childhood. My parents, Alan and Brenda, were small-town doctors. They raised my brother Daniel and me to become doctors. They always insisted on the importance of being a doctor and wouldn't allow any other path. When I was in elementary school, I drew a picture of a pet groomer for a project about future dreams, but it was torn up as soon as I brought it home. I can't believe you drew something other than a doctor. A pet groomer? Don't be ridiculous. My mother ridiculed my dream and threw it away as trash. Behind my tearful self, my father laughed mockingly. Emma can't become a doctor. Well, we have Daniel. We rely on you, Dan. Yeah, my smart brother never defied our parents. We were raised as the favored brother and the oppressed sister. The only reason this distorted family managed to maintain some balance was undoubtedly due to my brother's efforts. He was always on my side. Emma, follow your own path. Leave our parents to me. But that would mean, it's okay. I don't mind becoming a doctor that much. Your dream now is to be a veterinary nurse, right? Yeah, being a vet seems too hard. My brother never laughed at my dream, even though I wasn't as good at studying as he was. My kind brother was my only support and my shield against our parents. I loved my brother, but he died in a car accident during the summer of his second year of high school. I couldn't believe it. It was a heartbreaking farewell. With his death, the balance in our family crumbled, and my parents treated me even more harshly. How unlucky that this worthless daughter is left in our family. Oh, what misfortune. Why did Daniel have to die? It should have been you instead. When I heard those words, I felt my life crumble beneath my feet. No, our parent-child relationship had always been on shaky ground. Still, I gritted my teeth and got through junior high and high school. After graduating high school, I chose to attend a university where I could study veterinary nursing. Of course, my parents, who wanted me to go to medical school, were furious. You ungrateful child, never set foot in this house again. I was kicked out. Fortunately, I received a scholarship for academic excellence, so I didn't have to give up on college. I worked part-time jobs to cover living expenses and pursued my path. It was busy but fulfilling. Slowly, I began to feel a sense of self-affirmation. I felt that my life was starting from here. I met my current husband, Mike, at a part-time job introduced by my professor. We fell in love, dated, and decided to get married. For the first time in a while, I decided to contact my parents. I thought I should inform them about my marriage, but it was a mistake. Marriage? He must be a doctor, right? No, but he's... I told you we only recognize doctors. You're hopeless, Emma. Don't contact us about such things again. My father cut me off and scolded me. When my mother took over the call, she also sounded disappointed. You always let us down. I'm so disappointed. They didn't listen to anything I said. That long-awaited contact only made me feel more miserable. Because of this, our wedding was a small one. Actually, Mike's father, my father-in-law, is the CEO of a corporation, and Mike works at a subsidiary as the next CEO. Given their status, they would have wanted a grand wedding with many guests, but they prioritized my situation. We had a small wedding in Hawaii. Welcomed into the warm family, I cried secretly behind my veil. I learned that even happiness can bring tears. 2 years into our marriage, we continued to live peacefully. When we started considering getting a new house, I finally became pregnant. Finding out it was a boy at the checkup made it feel more real, and I was filled with a new kind of happiness. However, at the same time, should I tell my parents about the pregnancy? I began to worry about my parents again. He'll be their only grandchild after all. But yeah, Emma, take care of your feelings. My feelings? It might sound strange, but despite everything, I still wanted to rely on my parents. Maybe they would be happy about their grandchild. With that faint hope, I called them for the first time in 2 years. Hello, Mom, it's Emma. I couldn't understand their reaction when I reported my pregnancy, but when I said it was a boy, he's definitely Daniel reincarnated. My mother's tone changed, and my father also sounded cheerful and excited when he took over the phone. Well done, Emma. A boy, that's wonderful. Yeah, why? Even though they were happy, I felt a creeping sense of darkness. I had a bad feeling, and the next thing my father said shocked me like never before. Send the baby to us when he's born. We'll raise him to be a fine doctor. What? At first, I didn't understand what he was saying, but as my parents raved about reincarnation and succession, I realized this was beyond normal and felt my blood run cold. I had suspected it, but my parents were indeed strange. Overwhelmed by a fear-like emotion, I couldn't bear it and hung up the phone in the middle of the conversation. After that, they called repeatedly, leaving countless messages. Moreover, they even came to our house, demanding the grandchild and accusing us of being incapable of raising him. This was too much for both Mike and me, so we decided to consult his parents. I felt bad for worrying them, but they cared about their grandchild too. They listened to our story and thoughtfully considered the situation. Emma is in a delicate period now. It might be better to spend some time in a different place. After discussions, Mike's father suggested we stay at a family villa in Vermont. Mike arranged to work remotely, and Susan, my mother-in-law, would take care of the household chores and help with my needs. I was deeply grateful for their thorough support. Thank you so much for everything, Susan. No problem, Emma, you've done nothing wrong. Susan, who had been worried about my relationship with my parents since our marriage, was a very kind person. I thought Mike must have become so gentle because he was raised by her. During our isolation, I thought about childbirth. To avoid being found by my parents, I decided to have a home birth at the villa. Mike was surprised but supportive of my decision. I knew you were strong-willed, Emma, but I didn't expect this. All right, I'll support you too. I didn't know you thought that way, and I felt a bit embarrassed. Susan, who was listening, nodded seriously. I understand. I have a friend nearby who is a midwife. I'll ask if she can help. Oh, thank you so much. The midwife I was introduced to was a plump woman named Holly. She offered her full support for this unusual birth situation. I live nearby, so I can come anytime. Just leave it to me. Holly, with a reassuring chest thump, I couldn't thank her enough. What made me even happier was that when we moved to this villa, Mike brought a dog with him. He knew it was my dream to have a toy poodle, and he made it come true. I thought it might be a good distraction and also a future playmate for the baby. Thank you, oh, it's so cute. The black toy poodle quickly warmed up to us. I named it Tiltil from an old fairy tale I loved, The Bluebird, a strange adventure story about searching for happiness. I hoped that one day happiness would come to me too. In the quiet villa, I started preparing for the birth. I made sure to eat well and exercise properly for a safe delivery. The checkups went smoothly and the baby grew without any major problems. Holly said that the natural environment and stress-free life were beneficial. Preparations were made with Holly at the center for any emergency hospital transfers, and then labor began. The pain and suffering were overwhelming. Around dawn, I successfully gave birth to a boy. Holly placed the newborn baby on my chest and showed me his face. My adorable baby, warm and soft. Even though it was your first birth, it went smoothly. It was an easy delivery. Holly smiled warmly. Mike, who was there with me, cried tears of joy, and Susan, who was waiting, also cried and congratulated me. We had already decided on the baby's name, Roy. Everyone, thank you so much. No matter how much I thanked them, it would never be enough. Feeling an unprecedented sense of happiness with newborn Roy by my side, I fell into a deep sleep. But in the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of someone rushing towards us. Mike and Susan, who were in another room, came in with worried expressions. Emma, your parents have found out where we are. What? How? I don't know, but they'll be here soon. We have to hide. Mike and Susan helped me, still unable to move well to my feet. They took me and Roy, who was moving slightly, to a basement connected to the hallway. This is a soundproof room for playing musical instruments. Sorry it's dark because there's no light bulb, but please wait here. The room was small size. It seemed to have been hastily prepared. There was a simple bed, a lamp, water, and food. Susan, who had gone to check outside, came back. They're almost here indeed. We heard a car stop outside. My parents had arrived. No, they're going to take my baby. It's okay, we won't let that happen. Mike hugged my panicking self and brought me to the basement. Stay here, all right. Mike's unusually stern face scared me, and I let go of his hand. The door was closed and locked. Why all of a sudden something like this? I couldn't believe I had to hide in a basement right after giving birth. I felt like crying, but Roy made a little noise, so I hurried to calm him down. That's right, I had to stay strong for him. I focused on comforting Roy to keep my emotions in check. About 3 hours later, after feeding Roy, I was staring at the still closed door. Above, a black shadow suddenly appeared in the light from the lamp. Who is it? He wasn't born to be a doctor. He was born to be loved by us, Mike said firmly with a resolute voice. He, usually gentle, was looking at my parents with an unusually stern expression. I didn't know he had such a strong side. But he's our grandchild. He's our grandchild too. This is our villa, please leave. Susan also supported us with a straight back. She stood as firmly as Mike. They must have been having these kinds of arguments for a long time. I swallowed hard. It was time to end this. I was a mother now. I stepped forward. Leave, Emma. Mike and Susan were surprised by my sudden appearance. I felt sorry for interrupting their protection, but I had to be the one to end this. I had to put an end to this myself. You kicked me out. I have cut ties with you. We don't need a useless daughter. Just give us the grandchild. We can raise him much better. My cold and arrogant father, my mother who only saw my brother. I brushed away my mother's outstretched hand and said in a trembling voice, I've always wanted to be loved by you. I thought you might love me someday, but I glared at them sharply. Having this baby made me realize I don't need you anymore. Roy woke up to my loud voice. I entrusted the crying Roy to Mike and Susan and revealed in anger I'd never shown my parents before. Get out. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. Police? How dare you talk to your parents like that? My father raised his hand. I closed my eyes, bracing for the impact, but Mike stood in front of me and stopped his arm. No matter what, I can't allow that. Mike was bigger than my father. The difference in their builds made my father hesitate. Seizing the moment, I pulled out my phone and displayed the dial screen showing 911 like a badge of authority. I'm serious now, get out or I'll really call the police. My hands were trembling slightly. I planted my feet firmly to hide my fear. Seeing my determination, my parents finally seemed intimidated. They turned and left the living room. I couldn't hear what they were muttering at the entrance. Relieved, I collapsed on the spot. Emma, are you okay? I'm fine. Mike immediately caught me. Confronting my parents soon after giving birth had taken a lot of energy. But why was it my heart felt so light? I had finally spoken my true feelings to my parents. I felt a sense of relief and smiled naturally. And Mike gently smiled back at me. Till came over and licked my cheek. I'm glad you came, thank you. Till barked as if to respond, whether understanding or not. But it was because of Till that I found the hidden door and confronted my parents. Till might be my bluebird of happiness. Feeling reassured, I fell asleep in Mike's arms. The next day, I explained everything to Holly when she came over again, and she was furious. Oh my, that happened. From now on, I'll stay with you overnight, Emma. If they come back, I'll chase them away. Thank you, Holly. Holly was indeed reliable. I can't believe it. How could they do that to their own child, right, Susan? Yes, that's right. Susan, who had been addressed by Holly, lowered her head for a moment. Susan had been a bit down since last night. I felt terribly sorry, thinking she must have been exhausted from dealing with my parents. Mike was busy during the day with filing the birth certificate and preparing our new home surrounded by strong allies. I resolved to become stronger myself. Since that night of defiance, my heart had been reborn. I would never let anyone take Roy away, and 2 weeks later, the time for another confrontation came. While walking in the garden, my parents suddenly appeared as if they had been hiding somewhere. They tried to snatch Roy from my arms. Give him to us, Emma. We'll raise him. Stop it. They repeated their old arrogant claims about making him a doctor and being Daniel's reincarnation. Mike and Holly immediately rushed over. Don't touch Emma and Roy. Get away from them. I've called the police. The word police made my parents hesitate and let go. I faced them and spoke firmly. It was not out of anger like before, but with a calm and clear tone. Stop it, this is kidnapping. Kidnapping? We're just taking our grandchild. I'm Roy's mother. If you take him without my permission, it's kidnapping. The air around us crackled with tension. In the past, I would have just shrunk back in front of my parents, but now I was no longer just their daughter. I'm Roy's mother. I would stand up to anyone, even my own parents, for my new family. I had steeled myself for the inevitable encounter with my parents. There was nothing to fear anymore. Silence filled the air. Eventually, a police car actually arrived and my parents fled in panic. How dare you actually call the police, you ungrateful child? I watched them run away. Susan had been filming the whole scene from a distance. We had agreed to gather evidence if they showed up again. With this video and the police officer testimonies, we successfully got a restraining order. The officers even sympathized with us, saying that must have been tough. Seeing the video of my parents, I realized how horrible they looked. I wanted to hug my younger self who had wished to be loved by such people. A month later, we moved into the new house Mike had prepared for us. It was a large 2-story house with a garden, including a dog run course for Till, and a swing set where Roy would play. Someday, this didn't completely sever ties with my parents, but it created physical distance. They no longer knew where we lived, and I could finally focus on raising Roy in peace. Days passed peacefully, albeit busy with childcare. Susan and my father-in-law occasionally visited and adored Roy. Roy grew up quickly and happily, reaching 3 years old. One day, Mike showed me an article on a news site. Hey Emma, could this be about your parents? What the article was about a small-town doctor in my hometown who had caused a scandal on social media. The trigger was a post criticizing the doctor's arrogant and inconsiderate attitude towards patients. Normally such posts wouldn't make news, but my parents had responded on social media, escalating the situation. Their argumentative exchanges drew public attention, and they eventually lost credibility. Furthermore, they responded only to negative reviews on the website, ignoring positive ones. Their arrogant and presumptuous behavior had affected not only me but also their patients. Their own actions led to their downfall, losing trust and closing the clinic. A small-town clinic's reputation is everything. They couldn't keep it going. I'm speechless. I couldn't believe they had fallen so far just from a social media scandal. Their local reputation must have already been poor with few patients. Therefore, they desperately needed a successor to turn things around. My parents who pressured me to become a doctor from a young age. I don't know what drove them to such behavior, but lately I think maybe I don't need to try to understand. They tried to make their children and grandchildren clean up their mess. They really only thought about themselves. Mike, seeing me holding my head in my hands, spoke to me with concern. Sorry, I didn't mean to remind you of them. I shouldn't have told you. No, it's okay. I'm glad to know. Thank you. I no longer worry about my parents. However, thinking about them made me anxious about the future. With those two, anything is possible. I faced Mike thinking about what might come next. And a few months later, my parents indeed showed up at Mike and my father-in-law's company. Even though they didn't know where our new home was, they remembered Mike's workplace from our wedding. It was my fault for clinging to my parents at the time, and they had targeted it. But my parents never got to see me. We had anticipated they might show up and had planned accordingly. If they barged in, Roy and I would not come out. We would give them one opportunity to talk. We would handle it in the CEO's office. Later I heard what happened. So you finally came, Alan and Brenda. What? Yes, that's right. You've severed ties with Emma, so you are strangers to me as well. Mike, emboldened by this incident, stood strong with my father-in-law watching. Mike, as the next CEO, confronted my parents and asked why they were there. As expected, they were begging for money, having been forced to close their private clinic. And unable to find a hospital to hire them, my parents had come to ask for money to open a new clinic. Shameless doesn't even begin to describe them. We'll pay it back properly, that's right. Consider it a bond. We'll give up on Roy, just please. At that moment, Susan, who had been notified, burst into the office. Enough, not a single cent will be lent to you. Have you no shame? Susan, usually so gentle, fiercely opposed them. Seeing my parents dumbfounded, she revealed her trump card. I have many acquaintances in the medical field, many of whom hold significant positions. What? Susan listed several names, each renowned in the medical community, making my parents' faces pale. She informed them that their misdeeds in character were already well known. Any attempts to start a new private clinic would be met with opposition. Why do you have such authority? If you interfere with my son's family's happiness, I will use every power I have to hinder you. Mike described Susan's stance as almost demonic. My parents were driven out and added to the company's list of suspicious persons, barring them from ever entering again. Susan's connections in the medical field were not a bluff. Thanks to her, my parents have yet to open a new clinic. But why is Susan so willing to help us? I wondered. Why Susan would go to such lengths to protect us. Mike explained it to me. Susan, like me, had severed ties with her own parents. Her past, more harrowing than mine, made her determined to protect us. She had given up on her happiness until she met and married my father-in-law. Recalling a conversation between Holly and Susan 3 years ago. I can't believe it. How could they do that to their own child, right, Susan? Yes, that's right. Susan's tired expression back then now made sense. She had been remembering her own past. Susan now works as an accountant with many doctors among her clients. She had the connections to deal with my parents. Holly, who helped during my childbirth, was also well known among midwives, and she had used her influence as well. Mom said she feels like she's saving her past self by protecting you, Emma. She said she's grateful to you too, really. Susan, thanks to many people protecting us, Roy and I are here now feeling this gratitude. I decided to thank Susan properly later. I learned from Susan that my parents had their medical licenses revoked. Their fraudulent activities at the previous clinic had been reported by former employees. They had committed numerous illegal acts such as falsifying medical fees and violating pharmaceutical laws. The severe punishment was license revocation and a hefty fine. They were left without the ability to practice medicine or any title. Their downfall was deserved. They were far too selfish and it no longer concerned me. After reading the news, I closed my phone and started preparing a meal for my family. My difficult childhood, as if to make up for it, my future was now filled with happiness. Small things easily moved me to tears. Roy would say, "Mom, you're such a crybaby." Roy is now in 6th grade, already grown so much. Today is Parent Observation Day. I'm standing at the back of the classroom with Mike, listening to the children read their essays. Next up is Roy. My family consists of my dad, my mom, and our dog. Roy's essay was a blend of sincerity and politeness, which is common in children. Yet I cherished every word. When he concluded, my tears flowed freely. Roy might tease me again for being emotional. Mike embraced me as I wiped my tears away. Roy glanced at us from her seat, smiling knowingly. My joy stemmed from being surrounded by my family and our cherished dog, Till Till.